Hi everyone again. It's Ashley Stone. If you just joined, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. As I mentioned before, we're probably going to get started in the next 5 minutes or so. We're just waiting for the individuals that are in CPAC to get settled. And also, as I mentioned in the chat, is we will be sharing your well wishes with our retirement honorees. So if you have any well wishes to send to them, please do put it in the chat, and we will make sure that we get to our honorees. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. For those of you who remember Carpool that are not currently working here, it was a little bit later today on our lower school campus because of the rain. So we are just allowing a few extra minutes for our colleagues to join us. And I promise this time when I say it, we will be getting started momentarily. For those of you that just joined us, we will be sharing your wishes with our retirement honorees. So include in the chat and we'll make sure that it gets that message gets to them. So thank you for being here and we should be starting in a few minutes. Thanks.
Austin, perfect. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to our annual retirement and farewell reception. Actually, it wasn't annual. We weren't able to hold it last year. And so we are so thrilled to be able to honor our retirees today. Before we get started, I'd love to turn it over to Sean Kavanaugh to open us in prayer. Father Kavanaugh.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. To God, we give thanks for this gathering this afternoon, to recognize and give thanks for the service and dedication of these talented and committed teachers and priests. And in doing so, we give immeasurable thanks for Anne, Joyce, and Rosemary, all three of whom answered a call to serve young people many years ago. And all three faithfully fulfilled their vocations, teaching, molding, and guiding these young people along their own paths. Help us to dedicate our own lives in the same fashion that Anne, Joyce, and Rosemary have, knowing that this broken world needs now more than ever people who are committed to the principles and values that these three women shared and bestowed upon this community. For this, and for many, many more things that they have done in this community, we give thanks for their many years of service and dedication and to its young people. Amen.
Thank you, Father Kavanaugh. I am so grateful for all of your flexibility as we determined whether this special occasion could be in person, could be inside, or could be at 3:30 or 3:45 or 4 o'clock. So thank you all. As I said, we were unable to celebrate last year's retirement reception. I'm so grateful to be in person today. Today, we are celebrating Ann Ross, Joyce Ames, and Rosemary Beales, who have given together a combined 70 years of service to St. Stephen's and St. Agnes School. They have been amazing saints to us in every way, and we are so blessed by the time they've given to our community, and they will always be considered saints. We hope that you will come back often. Many times throughout the year, I have the wonderful opportunity to share with parents, alumni, parents of alumni, and future saints' families what it is that sets St. Stephen's and St. Agnes apart from others. What makes us special? Who are we? What are we at our core? I share stories about our students, about their achievements in the classroom, on the stage, or on the fields. I commend our thoughtful and talented alumni for their tremendous and successful careers, for the goodness infused in their work and in their everyday lives. And behind each and every one of these students and alumni, behind each of our saints, stands a teacher who's given of themselves selflessly and unconditionally to the well-being of that student. A teacher who has paid attention, has cheered from the sidelines in the front row, and has gone the extra mile, taken the extra step to ensure that each student is known and appreciated for their unique and remarkable gifts. Today, we honor three of those teachers, dedicated lifelong educators who've been constant and reliable sources of encouragement and goodness during the journey of countless students. It is my honor to share a few words about each of them today, and in addition, we've asked a member of our community to speak on each of their behalfs. I will begin with Rosemary Beales and end with Ann Ross. Rosemary. For 12 years, the Reverend Rosemary Beales was an integral part of our lower school team. Her commitment to our Episcopal identity and passion for teaching our youngest saints has left a lasting impact on our community. Reverend Beales established godly play at St. Stephen's and St. Agnes, creating and curating a godly play environment where she has sat in circles with children as they shared godly play stories and their insightful wonderings about Bible stories and church traditions. Reverend Michael Hinson shared that Rosemary is a godly play practitioner who brings much passion and expertise to the formation of children with emerging faith and spiritualities. Her commitment to God's people is commendable, and I appreciate her steady faith and dedication to her vocation. Reverend Beales designed the Creation Trail, which was completed in 2011 and highlights the gifts of nature and culture on the lower school campus. The trail is a nature walk that calls attention to and gives thanks for the beautiful campus while serving as a teaching opportunity for religion classes and other educational programs. The trail consists of 14 stops around the lower school campus where visitors may pause, learn, pray, and appreciate the nature surrounding us. In addition, Reverend Beales enjoyed leading the hands-on food preparation and hunger education project for each class from her time here. The highlight of each week has been the lower school chapel, where she led services designed to be both reverent and joyful, to provide substance and inspiration for our youngest saints as well as adults. She has also instituted innovations such as outdoor chapel for the feast of St. Francis of Assisi and Ashes for All on Ash Wednesday, and also served on the sustainability committee and was an active participant in SEED, Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. Former lower school teacher Margaret Teague shared, I've told countless folks who wondered why I didn't go to church on Sunday that I went to church on Tuesday at St. Stephen's and St. Agnes. I even have plans to hold my funeral there someday, way in the future. Rosemary is the reason St. Stephen's and St. Agnes became my church. She created the holy space that taught me, fed me, inspired me, comforted me, and sustained me. I will be forever grateful. I now invite Sean Kavanaugh to speak on Rosemary's behalf.
Thank you, Kirsten. One of the more daunting aspects about speaking for Rosemary and on Rosemary's behalf this afternoon, is that in the time that we've been allotted, it's very difficult to encapsulate 12 years of her incredible vocation here. For example, I could use the whole time by talking about what a great teacher she is, or what a great homilist she is, or what a great colleague she has been and continues to be. I could discuss her role as a national leader in the Godly Play program, an internationally recognized religious curriculum for young people. In fact, I could spend the entire retirement talk discussing any of these topics and go way over my allotment. Instead, if I have to capture only one aspect of Rosemary's vocation here and what it has meant to this community, to its adults and its children, it would be this: that she spent her vocation at St. Stephen's and St. Agnes above all else, teaching her students that loving and caring relationships are at the top of the list of God's priorities for us. Her biggest gift is that she taught our young people that loving and caring relationships are everything. In short, Rosemary's vocation was a model in mirroring the importance of relationships as both life-giving and sacred for each of us. I recall one of the very first emails Rosemary sent me when she was showing interest in possibly joining us all those years ago. And I remember being struck with her depth and rootedness to who she was as a priest. And in the email, yes, I saved the email because I'm a nerd, she wrote this to me. She literally said, she quoted an author, by the way, Sean, the author David Jensen, in his book entitled Graced Vulnerability, writes in his preface that he speaks as one claimed by children. She goes on to say in that email, this has been on my mind since I ran across it a few weeks ago because it so expresses my own experience and perhaps yours too. I have been thinking about one who is claimed by children. Claimed by children. I can't think of a better phrase to explain or describe what Rosemary has meant to this community and to the hundreds upon hundreds of children she has taught. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to what some of her former students have had to say about her. Now senior Christian Borden said this: Reverend Beales' class was by far one of my favorite and most peaceful parts of my lower school experience. Now junior Mary Cornell writes, Reverend Beales was truly an intricate part of my time at the lower school, and I'm so glad she is getting the recognition that she deserves. And though I'm sad for future lower schoolers, I'm glad that I had the experience of the stories that she told us. Senior Clay Waller shared this about Rosemary. During my time with Reverend Beales, I always looked forward to her class. You can really tell when someone is passionate about what they're teaching. And she was a clear winner in this category. I love that. Her lessons were always fun and got us as students to learn about Christianity in a different and unique way. And finally, junior Mackenzie Davis said this about Rosemary. Reverend Beales was a very animated storyteller. And if I remember correctly, everyone remembered the sandbox she used to illustrate the Bible and its stories. Religion was a very peaceful and calming class with her, and I remember kids getting excited to go be with her. You can tell from these stories, and I have many more I could list, you could tell what a wide swath of influence Rosemary has left in this community. On a personal note, I have missed and will continue to miss Rosemary's wisdom and counsel. I always knew when I talked to her, if I had something on my mind, I would get a wise and truthful response from her. I always benefited from Rosemary's sage counsel. Lower school head Jelene Spain Thomas shared the following story with me about the wisdom that Rosemary shared with her. Jelene says this: I will always be thankful for the blessing of witnessing Rosemary's deep and abiding faith and the way she helped others to lean on their faith in times of uncertainty. Just before one of my first major speeches as a new member of the community, Rosemary put her hands on both of my shoulders and reminded me that teaching and leading a school are more than a job. It's a vocation to which we are called by God. Father Michael Henson, Rosemary's colleague and fellow priest, said this about her: she brought the same passion of pursuit of excellence to her work and the godly play as she did to our community. As a chaplain and teacher, she worked diligently to provide a ministry of presence and authenticity. I could always count on Rosemary whenever I found myself in a challenging situation and needed assistance. When duty calls, Rosemary is ready to engage the moment with her heart, mind, and spirit. And if this is not enough high praise for Rosemary, I can also say and honestly say that in addition to all of her gifts, that perhaps one of her greatest spiritual gifts is and has been her faithfulness. Rosemary is a faithful person. And throughout her time here, she honestly and fully embodied what she referred to in her original email to me as someone who is claimed by children. I'll end with this. Rosemary's vocation here, a vocation dedicated to the youngest, most impressionable, and most vulnerable among us, was ultimately a vocation in which she taught her students that God loved them, God knows them, and that God has a story waiting just for them with their own name on it and with their own adventure before them, an adventure that is sacred, meaningful, and purpose-driven. For this and for so many other things that you did while you served this community, I give thanks to God for your vocation here, to our young people, for the seeds of faith you planted in them and the love you shared. Great job, good and faithful servant. You have attended to this community with vision, with faithfulness, and above all, with the sharing of your love with us. It's been an honor to serve here with you, and I wish you Godspeed in your new post.
Thank you, Reverend Beales. Thank you, Father Kavanaugh. I also forgot to welcome our guests who are on Zoom. Thank you for joining us today. We know many could not be here in person, and we're so grateful that you are with us on Zoom as well. I now look forward to honoring Joyce Ames. Joyce Ames first joined our community as a parent in 1996 when her son Justin started middle school. Her daughter Megan, 06, joined the upper school in 2002. Having worked in libraries throughout high school and beyond, Joyce volunteered in the upper school library in 2002, and the following year was offered a permanent role. Joyce was involved in many areas of school life, starting with her deep commitment to our school's environmental efforts. As a faculty advisor to the Upper School Green Leadership Club and a member of the All-School Environmental Sustainability Committee, she helped to coordinate the school's first ever Students for Sustainability Conference in 2008 and assisted with the conferences thereafter. Ashlyn Lee, class of 2020, shared the following. Every memory with Miss Ames is amazing and brings me so much joy. Though she was always the most helpful in the library and provided a constant comforting presence in the school, I most miss the Green Leadership Council moments that we had together, especially the stream and highway cleanups. Her passion for taking care of the environment is largely what inspired me to value environmentalism so highly. Joyce also shepherded our all-school faculty staff book club, worked behind the scenes with our Stage 1 players, coordinating ticket sales, reservations, and showtime distribution of tickets. We sang with the faculty choir at Thanksgiving and lessons and carols, and served as a faculty representative on the Campus Master Planning Committee 2016 to 2019, working with representatives from all 3 campuses, board members, and our architects to create the vision for our future renovation plans. Joyce also served as an unofficial but significant role as the upper school chapel support for as long as she was at St. Stephen's and St. Agnes. In the Episcopal tradition, her work was that of the altar guild, ordering chapel supplies, setting up and clearing chapel on a weekly basis, taking care of linens and vestments, and preparing for monthly Eucharist and special Holy Day observations. The Traditions Yearbook staff dedicated the 2018-2019 edition in Joyce's honor. From the yearbook dedication, when asked to describe Miss Ames, people called her kind, compassionate, and patient. One student even said Mother Goose, and that title perfectly encapsulates Miss Ames. She's truly a Mother Goose to the entire upper school community. She treats each student with patience and is always willing to help, no matter the task. She has the amazing ability to recognize and call every student by name, and many students felt that her small actions make up such a large part of the St. Stephen's and St. Agnes community. I now invite Brian Kane to speak on Joyce's behalf.
Well, good afternoon, and it's a great joy to return to St. Stephen's and St. Agnes to honor Joyce's 17 years of service to this school. I was very fortunate when I began here in 2012 that Joyce was assigned to be my guiding saint, a tradition here for new employees. And Joyce did not tell me what to do or how to be a saint. Joyce showed me what enduring optimism looks like and the importance of deep listening and a positive spirit in every daily action of school life. Joyce showed up for everything, always with spirit and joy. The only thing that Joyce did tell me to do, though, was to never park my car in the faculty lot if I had a 3:30 meeting at the lower school. So Joyce, in addition to her duties as the upper school librarian, as Kirsten mentioned, also led the faculty book club, which met on Monday evenings. We had great evening discussions on novels. We read books by Louise Erdrich, Jesmyn Ward, Adam Johnson, among others, and I was a newcomer to the group, but that's been going on for years. She always chose great titles, led spirited conversations, and as is her hallmark characteristic, she listened deeply to the opinions of others. Now, one book Joyce may have overlooked in these past several years is a new issue by Saints Press. It's currently edging its way up on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's called Joyce Ames, The Untold Story of a True Saint. For our Zoom audience, there's Joyce, and there's some great reviews on the back. So when I went to Goodreads, many a librarian not only gave it a 5-star review, but also told me that it defied categorization. Not just a biography, it's so much more. Others said a true confounder of the Dewey Decimal System. Saints Middle School librarian Alicia Blowers, in fact, wrote, "When I started here, Joyce took on the role of a cool older cousin librarian as we bonded over our shared New Jersey roots. She knew the ropes of school librarianship and our school culture and was always willing to have a chat, offer advice, and lend a hand. I'm eternally grateful for her kindness, humility, honesty, and willingness to help me on my journey as a librarian." Ms. Blowers, however, had no comment for me on how to shelf this book. So today I'm going to attempt to help a few distressed librarians across our country and offer a few suggestions on how to shelf this book. We will find the correct Dewey Decimal number to put your work on the right shelf. As many employees know, and as Kirsten mentioned, Joyce was the quiet force behind chapel vestry service and before all major school chapels. With absolute calm and efficiency, the altar was set, the vestry assembled, candles lit. Joyce's invisible presence in the chapel services, as in all school affairs, demonstrates her constant fidelity. Her presence in the times of loss and sorrow, as well as in joyful times, showed that she truly shone as a child of God in a loving and caring community. Joyce seems to personify the words we read in chapter 4 of Philippians. "Always be joyful then in the Lord. I repeat, be joyful. Never worry about anything, but tell God all of your desires of every kind in prayer and requests while giving thanks, and the peace of God, which is beyond our understanding, will guard your hearts and emotions through. Joyce's colleague, Dr. Roberta Klein of our English department, noted, Joyce did so much good and essential work behind the scenes. You know all about her environmental work, but who knew that she was also the washer of all those silver chalices after each Eucharistic service? And as is her typical fashion, Roberta added a sidebar remark. She has a raft of hidden talents. I attended a teacher's yoga session once and stood next to Joyce, who I assumed was a beginner like me. Well, to my amazement, she was a yoga pro. She did not only do all the poses with ease, but looked elegant, like poetry in motion. So, rumor has it Joyce also performs these same duties at Grace Episcopal. That is the vestry, not the yoga, I assume, right? Upper school administrative assistant Mary Beth Dyson said, Joyce appeared every morning at the upper school with a bolt of great energy and light. She loved her students, and my own children were lucky enough to be on the receiving end of her wonderful guidance. She walked the walk by working hard for our saints' successes, leading service trips, remaining cool amidst library teenage chaos, and cheering on all saints' endeavors. She made it cool to be in the library. I wish I had been a student of hers. So Joyce, maybe this book would end up in the religion section, the 200s. I don't know, Christian practice and observance is the 240s, but I'm going to leave this up to you. But as you know, she was a key figure at the upper school's environmental efforts. We heard about many of them earlier. She always, what really struck me was that Joyce always encouraged the student engagement. This was not an adult thing. It was getting the students out there. She had them measure their footprint on the planet, care for all living creatures, protected all parts of our world. She organized students to measure particulates from a car, putting white socks on exhaust pipes, dating ourselves, I know, potting plants, advocating for saw-whet owls and baby seals, selling baked goods to raise funds for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and signing up our students for the cleanups of Strawberry Run just down the hill, where we did that 4 times a year, as well as our Jones Point Potomac River cleanups. There was never a doubt that Joyce would be in that stream, up to her feet in water, enthusiastically picking out styrofoam and cans. Charlotte Carr, current senior, remarked, Mrs. Ames has been a mentor, a role model, and a friend I could always count on. Not only was she there to help cite sources and correct papers, but she was consistently a listening, supportive presence to me who proved successful at calming my stress and nerves. I am beyond grateful for her endless enthusiasm she had regarding green leadership, and I will always remember the amazing time I spent with her discussing and planning outreach projects. Joyce was also the success of 6 regional Students for Sustainability conferences, 2 postponed due to snowstorms, and always there for me in each facet of it, always saying yes, even to Sundays, preparing the hallways for our many visiting students on a Monday morning. She made sure every detail was addressed and finalized. Joyce, I owe you a huge debt of gratitude for being the calm and consistent force behind those conferences. So that might put your book with your environmental slant in sciences, 500s, maybe the 550s, earth science and geology. So we got 2 categories here. And finally, we have to discuss your job, your role as the librarian here, department head and unofficial director of the junior class history research papers. Your unflappable presence in the library for years is nothing short of remarkable. Your office was a revolving door of every student, every period, every day. It was never quiet except for chapel, maybe the morning meeting time, and even then, you sometimes encountered some surprising circumstances. You remained unflappable, calm, forgiving. As upper school history faculty member Kate Hardwick said, Joyce has a natural energy that makes any room she is in brighter, happier, and more positive. Anytime I talked to her, I somehow left the conversation feeling more buoyant. She made the library a welcoming place for students and teachers, and she was always willing to help students with their research, writing, or biographies. Joyce celebrated the seasons of time and literature with well-researched and attractive displays at the front of the library, placing well-chosen fiction and nonfiction works for Earth Day, Black History Month, Women's History Month. And in fact, there were a few times when I found books there that were not yet on the Arlington County circulation list. Well done. So Joyce, that would put your work now maybe in 300s, social sciences, maybe the 360s, that's social problems and social services, or maybe even the technology, section 660, management and public relations. But whatever shelf you end up on, it should be known that you excelled at this role for nearly 2 decades. Joyce, in so many ways, your work here at the school was not your job. Your spirit, a holy one indeed, showed us that the foundation of living a rich and a meaningful life is to enter each indoor and outdoor space that we occupy with goodness and optimism. What a beautiful soul she is in every way, wrote Nicole Harding, assistant to our head of school. She was always so authentically cheerful and positive when she came up to say hello. She made it a point to pop in every morning and say, "Hey, sweets." And there was never a negative thought or word from her about anyone. She was just positive and uplifting to each person she encountered, a bright and beautiful soul. Former faculty member Bobby O'Brien also shared Nicole's thoughts and noted, "Joyce is so positive, optimistic, caring, compassionate, honorable, a person everyone wants to be around." And of course, we know that as mother to two saints, Justin and Megan, and her husband, Nat, she brings that same joy into their family. And I mention that she takes regular trips up to see her 94-year-old father, and she would still show up Monday mornings with a fresh face, positive outlook, and keeping all of the rest of us motivated. Like the book about you, Joyce, you defy categorization, but the many facets of you compose a gem that continues to sparkle in the school that you serve so well. We know that you will continue to radiate optimism, goodwill, hard work, and joy in the communities you will engage in your future pursuits. And like St. Stephen's and St. Agnes School, these places will be left better and more whole due to the presence of your grace and goodness. Congratulations, Joyce. We know that this book has more chapters coming, and we cannot wait to read the second edition.
Mr. Kane, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I want to read that book. Ann Ross. Ann's rolling her eyes at me. I apologize. I'm grateful for Ann's commitment to our lower school and the St. Stephen's and St. Agnes art department for decades. Her dedication to instilling and inspiring creativity in generations of our youngest saints will be missed. Ann joined the community in 1968 as a child of a faculty member. Her mother, Lois Kling, was a St. Agnes teacher for 20 years. Ann's siblings, Libby Kling Frank and Dr. John Kling II, were saints, as well as her daughter Megan Ross Vento and her nephew Patrick Kling. Growing up, Ann fondly remembers attending many of her brothers' and nephews' varsity basketball, football, and baseball games, cheering on the Saints. In 1978, Ann was hired to be the lower school art teacher at St. Agnes, but 2 years later moved to Colorado Springs with her husband. They moved back to Virginia in 1980, and she subbed at St. Agnes and worked as a graphic artist while taking graduate courses. She was hired full-time as a first grade teacher at St. Agnes in 1982. 9 years later, she moved to third grade, and in 2005, the third to fifth grade art teacher position opened up. Encouraged by one of her dearest colleagues, former kindergarten teacher Nancy Eaton, she applied for the position and declares it the best decision I ever made. Ann shared her love of art and culture with her students, encouraging them to explore and observe the world around them. She organized Artstravaganza, an annual day-long celebration of the arts during which students have the opportunity to create, listen, dance, and play alongside professional artists. Ann has been involved outside of the art studio in many ways. She's been on nearly every kind of committee: accreditation, curriculum, faculty salary and benefits, and search committees. She established and directed the lower school chemical dependency prevention program, for which she received the Governor's Award from the Virginia Governor, Doug Wilder. Additionally, she received the Faculty Excellence Award in 2016. This award is given by the St. Stephen's and St. Agnes Alumni Association and recognizes a passion for one's discipline, positive and supportive connections with students, cooperation with colleagues, a desire to grow professionally, and loyalty and respect for the values of the school community. Sarah Gandy, class of 1994, shared, "Mrs. Ross was my first grade teacher in 1982 in the downstairs of the Sinclair building at St. Agnes. And now as my children navigate kindergarten and are beginning elementary school, I find my mind wandering back to my own memories of that time so often. Mrs. Ross was on the first day of school pointing out the red letters in the alphabet, A-E-I-O-U, on the wall, and explaining what they were. The pattern blocks we would play with in our free time play, the sound of the stairs as our class would trot up and down to music or gym or chapel, our names written out and taped on the top of our desks, the smell of the paint and clay from the art room down the hall, and the great anticipation and excitement over which sticker Mrs. Ross would put on our worksheet if you did a great job. Thank you, Mrs. Ross, for getting us off to a great start." I now invite Kate Elkins to speak on Anne's behalf. Kate.
I'm so honored to be able to speak on Anne's behalf today. As an upper school art teacher, I started working here 9 years ago. Anne and I have never taught on the same campus, but I've come to know her through our department time. My first memory with Anne is from my first professional day as a saint, the one right after Thanksgiving. I remember walking into the CPAC that morning and having that feeling like when you walk into the school cafeteria on your first day of high school and you don't know who you're going to sit with and your heart is beating and your palms are sweaty. And for someone who suffers from a little social anxiety, walking into these spaces can be challenging. Anne was sitting in the first row of the back section, always the art teacher sitting in the back. She caught my eye and she waved me over and she said, "You're one of us, sit here." I was so grateful for her that day. And I'm pretty sure that I've sat next to Anne at every professional day since. There was one professional day about 3 or 4 years ago. Kiki invited Ted Lewis from Side by Side, Virginia, to speak to our faculty about his experiences with inclusion. He told a story about a time when he was bullied in high school because kids didn't accept him, that he didn't feel as if he belonged. It was a moving story, and I glanced over at Anne, as I wont to do, and I saw her wiping away tears. She has so many unique gifts, but at the top is her ability to feel empathy for others. She feels it deeply and does what she can to pull people in and make them feel included. I think this is what makes Anne such an amazing teacher. Yes, she's super creative. She's a fantastic artist, as you can see by some of the illustrations that were posted today. Her class projects are wonderful. But what's really special is that when you're with her, you feel like you belong. One of the best parts of my job in the art wing is the studio chatter. When they're making art, students have great conversations. So I thought I'd share a few snippets that I've overheard about Mrs. Ross over the years. I've heard, "Oh, do you remember that time in art class when we used hair dryers to melt plastic?" Or, "Do you remember those little cupcakes that look real? I think they wanted to eat them." I've heard countless stories about open studio during recess. This is a favorite memory for lots of kids. Anne had a bell in her classroom. She told the kids that she'd only ring the bell to get their attention if they weren't listening. She'd prefer they work quietly so they could follow her voice cues and know when she needed their attention. And for the most part, she never had to ring the bell. But apparently, there was one day when this particular group got a little out of hand. I'm sure it's hyperbole on their part, but according to them, they were running around like little crazy people. And then they heard the bell. They stopped in their tracks and they saw their lovely Mrs. Ross just ringing that bell, which got their attention immediately, and they never forgot it. The other day, one of our graduating seniors was talking about a memory box that they made in the 5th grade. Mrs. Ross promised that someday they would look back through their box and it would be really special. Last week, this student, Shimani Chamberlain, was packing up her bedroom because she had to move, and she found her box. She told us about all the things that she put inside it. This launched into a whole discussion about what everybody else placed in their boxes. They all still have them. You were right. Lastly, I chose this one because I think it really captures Anne. One student would tell Mrs. Ross that she had expressive eyes. So for fun, Anne would look at the student and open her eyes wide to make her laugh. This student remembers being in art one day, and there was a lockdown, not a drill, but a real lockdown. She was absolutely terrified, the student. Mrs. Ross pulled the kids into a group and told them all to look into her eyes. They sat there for I'm not sure how long, totally distracted from the actual scary situation going on outside of the school, while Mrs. Ross made funny expressions with her eyes. This memory has stuck with this student, and she still talks about how much Mrs. Ross must have cared about her to do that. This is the impact that Anne's had on the thousands of students who've moved through her classroom. Not only did they receive an incredible foundation in visual art, I can attest to that as they come up through the high school. But they felt loved and they felt like they belonged. And from her example, they learned to be inclusive and kind to everybody. And we will miss her, you, so much. Congratulations.
Today, we recognize three extraordinary women who will always be saints. Joyce and Rosemary, you are already missed, and I can't imagine St. Stephen's and St. Agnes without you. I hope you will all not be strangers. We are so grateful that you have dedicated your lives and your love to our students and to our community. We are different because of the impact you have each had on us. Immediately following, we have a reception in the CPAC lobby. I hope you will join us for a drink, and there's a Saints cookie to take on the road. Unfortunately, we can't have food yet, but take the cookies on the road and enjoy some drinks and some conversation. We look forward to hearing wonderful stories about your time at St. Stephen's and St. Agnes. Thank you to everyone who made this program possible, especially Nicole Harding, Lisa Hassel, Hope Rhodes. Thank you for all that you did. Austin Fadri for running the technology today. And for all of you on Zoom, thank you for joining us. And again, celebrating these three wonderful women who have had a major impact on who we are as an institution. Thank you and enjoy.